disabled. And as a result, the entities, accountants, and auditors need to be careful when they are looking at these particular donations which are made by entities. On employees, requirements on employee welfare, what are you doing in relation to the welfare of your employees? Maybe it is salary, medical benefits, social security, and all that. All those should be disclosed in the report by those charged with governance. Other benefits such as training, if they're there, in relation to the environment, work environment, all those come under employee welfare. But we also have a requirement on disabled person and gender balance to be able to say who are the disabled person, what is the policy of dealing with them, continued employment and training of people who become disabled while still in employment. And I know sometimes we struggle on saying, on the definition of disabled person, who are they? Because now they'll say that even those who wear glasses, I started working without glasses, now I have glasses, I'm disabled. And as a result, I became disabled nikiwa kazini. So there should be a policy on that. So who are disabled, and as a result, what are the policies of dealing with them? Training and development should be considered. Gender balance, very important. What is our policy on gender, and what are we doing in that particular area? What target are we aiming to achieve? Is it 50-50? Is it 40-60? The target should be very clear. If there are issues which you are saying that they are prejudicial, outside the control of the entity, then the entity is allowed not to discuss those aspects in detail. But the TFRS 1 report by those charged with governance, should say clearly that the report is complying with TFRS number 1, that the directors have complied with the principles of TFRS number 1 in preparing that particular report. That is key. The new requirement is on publication. So publication will apply to all public interest entities and public sector entities. So now that we know that the CAG is signing, for example, the opinion of public sectors by 31st March, we expect that within a month, all those reports of public sector entities will be in their website. The standard is saying that all public sector entities and those designated as public interest on this first line, and those designated as public interest shall be required to publish in their website the report by those charged with governance not later than 30 days after the approval of audited financial statements by those charged with governance. So that is very important, and it is for the accountants, I know, to remind the board, to remind the IT people, if they're the ones who are uploading it in the website, that we have the timelines for publishing these financial statements. If your reports were signed in January, then by now they should be there in the website. And we're saying the responsibility will rest with those charged with governance. The TFRS 1 report by those charged with governance, should be approved by the directors, those charged with governance, and the report should indicate what are the names of the people who approve this particular report on behalf of the board. So the effective date is 1st of January 2021. So for those in the private sector, this is their second year of implementing TFRS 1. For those in the public sector, they implemented it for the first time for the year ended 30th of June 2022, and they're going to implement it again in June 2023. And as a result, we expect that there will be improvements in areas where they were not able to comply in 2022. TFRS 1 was issued from various international pronouncements by other boards like the ISB, the IFRS Practice Management Commentary, and also the IPSAS-B, RPG 1, 2, and 3 were considered. And as a result, that's why we are saying that with the changes in standards, the emphasis on sustainability, we also want to look at our requirements on TFRS 1 and see what we can update on this particular report. So briefly for today, those are the requirements of TFRS 1. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, CPA Dr. Nbaa Kiure, for your presentation on Tanzania Financial Reporting Standard number 1, the report by those charged with governance. Thank you very much. May we give her a hand of applause, please? Thank you very much. Now, I take this opportunity maybe to start with those who are online. I think they have posted their questions already. Okay. Chat box. Yes. You're welcome.
Thank you. So far, there is one question from Malika. Thank you, Malika. That previously in the financial statements, directors' report and statement of responsibility of directors were kept in different pages. So should they be different or should they be kept together? Actually, the standard allow both practices. If you want to put them in one statement, the report by those charged with governance, to have statement of responsibility by those charged with governance in it, that is fine. But if you want to split the two, that is also allowed. So it is, we've seen different practices and all of them are allowed by the board. For those online, you can raise your hand and ask the question, and probably that will be a way of testing the system also, and the participants here will hear your question. Just raise your hand and we will see on this side. We have a question from Mr. Kilenga saying that the question has disappeared. One new message. He was saying that it is too much information being disclosed. That is why we are telling entities to be able to analyze what is required in the report and make sure that what they disclosing in the director's report does not jeopardize their competitive advantage. So to carefully look at the information which is required and disclose only what they feel that is enough for stakeholders. So TFRS 1 is for all entities in Tanzania, whether it is a company, it is a branch, as long as it is not a micro entity. Sole proprietor, partnership, not necessary. But when you look at NGOs, public sector entities, companies registered under the Companies Act, branches, they are under the Companies Act, all of them are required to comply with TFRS number 1. Anyone from online? I've seen a name, Simon Pantaleo. Simon, can you say anything, maybe just for us to see that you can ask a question and we can hear on this side? Simon, you can unmute and talk. Kilenga, I see Simon is not available. Mr. Kilenga, karibu.
Thank you very much, Nbaa, for a very good presentation. As you responded to my questions about the plans now completing in terms of the disclosure that they make, I'm only concerned as what is now we're getting kind of a trap at the moment, because when you're trying to enforce the level of disclosure, what ordinarily we expected from the standard, I think you are getting a lot of ping-pong discussions in the boardroom and even in the audit committee. My suggestion going forward, considering that you're actually implementing this second year for some plans and probably the government for the first year, it would be good at least for you to share what should be the baseline information in kind of narratives and quantitative that you can share to many users as practical as possible. At the moment, I see a lot of discretions because this is more like principle driven. But again, when you talk to the people in the boardroom or even in the audit committee, they seem a little bit hesitant to actually accept the level of disclosure that you're talking about. For instance, when you talk about the plan for the next year, although numbers are indicative, but sometimes those numbers they tell a good story about how the growth plan of an organization is. Now, for some companies, it becomes quite tricky. And I think my suggestion, I'm sorry if I'm taking too much, my suggestion in Nbaa should at least find a kind of a template-driven guidance. What are the minimum expected? And I think also avoid the areas where we say should and must. We must be very clear what is an option available, relief available to a plan, and what is mandatory to be present in the report of those charged with government. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Kilenga. Mr. Kilenga, can you switch on your video? Mr. Kilenga, if you can switch on your video. I think the voice was clear, and the face is clear. So the system is working. Can we clap to that before the question? Thank you very much, Mr. Kilenga, and I think you can see them also. Thank you. So the challenge is true that many people are not willing to disclose that much information, and it is, I think, in relation also to the question which is asked in the chat box. So as Nbaa, what we've done is we've done quite a number of training on TFRS1 for the past 2 years, trying to educate the companies and the shareholders. Right now, what the users, what stakeholders want is information. Ile mambo yetu ya zamani ya kuficha information, siku hizi hauwezi ukaendelea namna hiyo. Look at all the companies operating worldwide. Stakeholders want information to make decision. So as management of the company, those charged with governance, the key thing is to be able to have policies when you're talking about disclosure, to be able to say what is it that you are putting, what is it that you are disclosing, what is the extent of disclosures that you are going to put in the financial statement. When you talk about strategies, just say I'll improve on IT, but don't go in detail to say this is how much I'm going to spend, this is how many I'm going to recruit. No, just give us a brief for us to have an idea of where this company is going. And look at the director's report of some big companies like CRDB, Vodacom, NMB, and the like. You'll see quite extensive disclosures in those financial statements. And as Nbaa, I know you talked about the sample maybe which we can prepare. We learned from 2010 experience where when we prepared the illustrative director's report, almost every entity copied what was there, and all the directors' reports were quite alike. So now we've said, okay, maybe for the first 2 years or 3 years, let the entities stream with TFRS number 1. And then from there, we'll be able to pick samples and give them to the entities for them to use those. Because we want every entity to say or tell us what is specific to the entity. Now, in the previous director's report, you'll find an entity in education. In future prospect, because the illustrative talked about buildings, they are talking about buildings. While you expect them to talk about their causes and the future and technology, so that was not the case. So it was a bit confusing. So we are trying to avoid that. So maybe after a year or two, we'll be able to come up with illustrative for different sectors. So from Nbaa's training, as long as an entity is in Tanzania and preparing financial statements in Tanzania, whether required by regulators, maybe TRA or other regulators, then they will be required to use TFRS1. But if it is donor reports, say not the ones for NGO regulator, it is just for your specific purpose, specific donor, then you can decide not to use TFRS1. You talked about social responsibility. TRA, some officials are discouraging businessmen to give donations. Yes. Nbaa position. So Nbaa is just talking about the disclosures of donation, political and charitable. So if it is political, if you have political donation, those will be disallowed by TRA, that is as per their regulation. So Nbaa doesn't govern or doesn't have any regulation on political or charitable. All that Nbaa wants you to do is to disclose. This is what I did, this is what I did in my operation, and that is the end. And then other regulators will decide what they do with those particular information, with that particular information. Thank you very much. I see we don't have any further question in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Madam. CPA tent is coming. Okay, I think the online questions are over. Okay, do we have any question here from? Yes. Any question? If you don't have it.
I think we can try to ask and see if the online people will hear the question. We've seen them, we've seen the segment.
Okay.
We can put it to Twitter.
Okay.
Not necessarily a question, even a comment.
Yeah, thank you so much, CPA Dr. Nbaa. We want to congratulate you for the very good presentation, and I also congratulate Nbaa for launching this online training infrastructure. I think it will be a very great relief for people who are in the remote areas, areas where they're not able to access modern facilities, but good presenters, good tutors. So this will be a great relief, but also a big milestone to our profession. So we really want to congratulate you, and we hope as much as our policies and our disclosures for Nbaa are concerned, we also be putting more in terms of where we want to move with technology in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I take this opportunity to welcome CPA Angelile Tende for
Thank you CPA Dr. Nbaa for the presentation. I just want to make some few comments. Yeah, for the board member, please, can you remain behind? We have some specific issues to be covered by you. Kunaomba baki tu wakati wengine wanatoka. And for the invited guests, on behalf of the Nbaa family, I want to extend our appreciation for your participation in this event. And of course, this is just a beginning. You continue to hear from us as we continue using these facilities for capacity building program for our profession. Kwa hiyo tunawashukuru sana kwa kuja na kuhudhuria. And therefore, this marks the end of this event. Asanteni sana kwa kuja.